Hi everyone, and I hope today is a common theme, like Kevin was speaking about passion, because that's been very much a theme of my story, amongst other things, and I want to share some of that story with you. Starting perhaps with what was my first passion, which was skiing. And I included this shot because it's actually taken on hill end. And unfortunately, it also dates me somewhat because most of you won't recognize the sponsor there. It was actually an incredibly trendy clothing brand. But after I stopped skiing so much, my brother carried on and was a ski instructor in France for about 10 years. And I happened to have a job that was 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And so during the course of an entire winter season, every 2 weeks I flew and stayed on my brother's floor for 2 weeks and skied. And that was really great. It was about the time that the budget airlines were taking off as well. And you know, Ryanair and EasyJet, but there were others, Duo, Buzz, German Wings, a bunch of ones that aren't necessarily around. And at that time, I had to go on a computer and search all of those sites, and then the Expedias, and then the British Airways. And I had to do that every single 2 weeks to get from any one of 5 London airports to about 4 airports in the Alps. And so as a computer programmer, what I did was I spent a week building a tool that I could use that would save me some time. And it did work. It saved me about half an hour of time each 2 weeks. So whether the cost benefit was there in terms of spending a whole week building the tool is sort of a moot point. But it was from that point, and also at the point that I got together with a couple of friends, 2 co-founders, who I'm pleased to say are still friends, that we decided to make a business out of this tool. And really the motivation, I think looking back, it's an obvious thing to have done to start an internet economy company. It wasn't necessarily perfect timing. It was after the dot-com bust over the change of the millennium, a bit after that. But nevertheless, it was a huge opportunity. And it seems an obvious thing to do. And in fact, many people have said, oh, essentially, right time, right place. I think a programming friend once said you throw 10 entrepreneurs against a wall and hey, one of them's going to stick. But it's actually a really difficult, step to take, and I think it's harder than people think. And it's not just because of what you're putting at risk, whether it's money or time or pride. I think it's also a lot to do with uncertainty as well, and also questioning yourself. Why is it that I would succeed when 9 out of 10 startups are going to fail? And I think the thing to bear in mind is everybody goes through that journey, and I'd encourage you to recognize those feelings, but perhaps don't wait as long as I did, which was till I was about 32 to get started. So we decided to form a business. We broke a number of rules. We didn't receive any external funding. 2 of us continued working full-time and split 2 salaries 3 ways, and we did that through till, I think it was 2005, till all 3 of us were full-time in the business. The other thing we did was we built a website with no idea how we were going to make money, and eventually business models emerged. So we're a travel search engine, and when you click through, having chosen something, to the credit card page, if you buy something, then we get a commission. It's very similar to the AdWords model on Google. It's an advertising referral model. And all those things emerged after the full intention to build a service that was as useful as possible, and business model then followed. And indeed, nowadays there's a lot of stuff online about getting the product model right before you get the business model, because that has to be a precursor. So we plugged away and continued at what we did. The office you saw on the previous slide was down in Leith. It's the very opposite of Silicon Valley, where 90% of internet economy success is happening. And we took a step, it's about 2007 or 8, to say, well, actually, instead of covering low-cost airlines in Europe, we're going to cover every single flight in the world. And that was quite a big step for us, with a small number of people at that time. And indeed, subsequently, we've taken, last year, we took the next step, which was to say, we're going to be about all of travel, not just about flights. And so there's an incredible amount of data involved. I think about 18 months ago, we were processing about 1 billion flight prices each day. And I expect that's at least doubled in the interim. And then as we've gone on over the years, the number of people using our site's gone up. So we're now at about 30 million individuals using our website and our apps each month. And actually, if you think about it, there's people who probably fly a couple of times a year at most. So it's not like Twitter, where if you use Twitter, you're going to probably use Twitter most days. So 30 million people using us in a given month. If everybody's, say, flying once every 6 months, that's actually a user base of 6 times that. So it's a powerful engine of growth and word of mouth, and our challenge is really to continue doing that as we get bigger. To put that in some context, if you take 2013 and just consider flights, then of people that actually clicked through, found the flights that they were interested in, clicked through and entered their credit card details, the total ticket value is about $7 billion. And that's very much happening all around the world. So 20% of our users are UK-based. And in fact, I think one of the beauties of operating an internet-based business is you can think globally from a very early stage. If we'd wanted to look much more close and focused in and be Scotland's best flight search engine, we would have achieved that goal on day one, because we don't have competition right here. But there is a downside to that global opportunity, and that is that you can, within a very short space of time, become irrelevant to your user base and indeed people who haven't yet heard of you. So there's both an opportunity that essentially several billion people are your potential customer and loyal visitor, but equally, anybody sat in a bedroom anywhere around the world can decide to be your new competition. So there's probably 3 things that we've focused on that's been quite constant over the time at Skyscanner. And the first one is on product functionality. We were 3 technical people. We weren't from the travel industry. We were thinking about things from a user perspective and the technology that would help us solve that. And that stayed fairly constant throughout. I think one of the things I didn't expect was people. Actually, a few weeks ago, we had a all-hands company update, and it was in this very room. And it's quite a scary thing to see a room this big, filled with people, and realize that something that you did a dodgy spreadsheet to prototype a few years ago is now carrying the professional hopes and dreams of a large group of people. But I've discovered, and really I've learned, that one thing that a colleague says to me, which is software is a people business, which sounds kind of contradictory, but actually getting groups of people to move in the same direction and to work in a cooperative manner is one of the hardest things, and I think why the social scientists are probably the furthest removed from being science and have the greatest amount of intuition and rules of thumbs, because it's such a complex area. So people has unexpectedly become the major source of our advantage or potential risks to our business in terms of if we act dysfunctionally. I think one of the beautiful things about having an internet business is that everything's measurable in real time. You know, if I was setting up a chain of news agents, and it's something that even if I'm really successful starting with one, it's something I probably have to think about handing on to a future generation or something. On the internet, you're getting response and feedback every single day. And I think I had a very privileged position of releasing code every single day and seeing people either abandon what they're doing because I'd set new world records of bugs per line of code, or actually managing to fix something and then seeing it reflected immediately in the behavior of visitors on the site. And that could mean a really great thing, not just for technical people, but for product people, designers, commercial people. The first month that we actually were able to monetize some of our traffic was a beautiful thing. I wish we'd kept the check for £46 as it was in that first month. So those are all good things, and following on from the people and the geography and the global market, we now have offices both in Edinburgh and Glasgow, and most of our people are indeed here. We have offices in Barcelona, Singapore, Beijing, and the latest one in Miami. All of that over the course of time has really meant that people tend to think that I must be more talented than they thought I was when I was 30. They draw exactly the wrong conclusion, and that is actually they should judge me more tenacious and hard-working than they thought when I was 30, and indeed some of my colleagues. And I think that's perhaps the inevitable lesson that comes from actually getting stuck into your own business, which is that it's a wonderful opportunity to write history, to predict the future, and to make it happen, and without worrying about your currently available resources, but bootstrapping your way to make the future happen. But 90, if not 99% of that time, when you commit to that, will be effort and execution and tenacity and those things, rather than your previous experience, certainly my previous experience, which was moving on to another topic of, I thought of that in the pub. I think you see that if you take the greatest internet success, founded in just under 10 years ago, and one of the largest internet businesses, still when they moved into their new headquarters, left the sign, turned the sign round from what it was before. And it wasn't long ago that Sun Microsystems was one of the world's preeminent companies, and that is quite a warning. And perhaps also what I take from that is to try to enjoy the journey rather than actually believing there is any fixed end goal, because I know for me success is 10 times where we are now. Unfortunately, that moves at exactly the pace at which we increase in size, so it's always unattainable. And we continue to face challenges. They come at every time of the company. So we're doing pretty well on mobile, and with 30 million people have installed our apps, for instance, and about 35% to 40% of our website usage is on a mobile, often tablet device. But we're not inherently mobile. If I take myself as an example, all my technical background and user experience was formed in front of a desktop with acres of real estate. And I can say that we get mobile, but do we actually? And we're taking steps right now, for instance, every developer having a tablet right next to them so that the first device they test on is a tablet device, and our designers to actually design for all the different touch interactions and geolocation, etc., from the outside, and then adapt it to desktop. And in terms of where we could go, well, you know, I used to talk generally internally within the company about saying that that I thought it was a great thing as a milestone, a side effect, for us to be Scotland's first billion-dollar internet economy company. And we've probably achieved that with investment from a company called Sequoia last year at just under that. And I think that's incredibly important because the encouragement, we need events like this, but we also need demonstrations of what's possible in Scotland. And people who've either worked in Skyscanner or have spoken to me and thought, well, there's nothing special about him, you can set out and aim to beat the modest level of achievement that we've achieved. And I think that geographical proximity is incredibly important to companies that are just starting out on this journey. But we're not finished where we are now. We've got a huge way to go forward. If you think we're now carrying a device in our pockets constantly, and if you think about every one of those billion devices being tethered to a person and thinking about what it means to be the perfect assistant to people moving in time and place and doing stuff, that's a much bigger scope than looking at booking funnels and comparing whether something's £5 cheaper or not, or what particular timetable says what. That's an opportunity to provide information on demand in the context of what you're doing, whether it's setting up a calendar appointment and having various machine learning algorithms infer what your travel needs to be, and that sort of thing. So the opportunities are really significant. And at a more prosaic level, you know, one of the reasons that I got into this was I kind of felt that online travel, you know, whenever you needed to organize something, it kind of gave you a leg ache and you just didn't enjoy it. It was a hassle. And yet buying a book is pretty easy these days. Underneath it, there's a huge amount of complexity to solve. It's not actually a lookup of a price or a timetable even, except for direct flights. It's a real-time distributed calculation, which makes the environment very challenging to be able to make it as simple as buying a book. But that means that our job is very far from being done, and there's huge opportunity to do that much better in the future. So I hope this session's been of some interest to you, particularly anybody that's interested in working and forming their own internet economy startup, and I'd be delighted if any of you have any questions. Thank you.